I'm married, I got 3 kids, and retired, and spend all my time or my spare time that I can without being home with all the projects I get at home, but just hanging out in the woods, and met Matt through a Facebook group. And like I was telling Keith, I think, I know all the researchers' names, all of them, even ones you've probably never even heard of. 72, that's a long time. And really only one I connected with, not to brown nose him because he's here, but the truth is the truth. Well, the truth is the truth. You all feel it too, I think, right? You feel the realism of a person. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying Ron Moorhead. He's also like super awesome. I love Ron. But as far as the connection of who the Janu is, and more than just a flesh and blood and all that, I always knew there was something more, and he just fit the bill for sure. And I gravitated towards him, and that's why I'm here today. And it's a pleasure to meet all of you.
Me too.
Thank you.
I don't know who this guy is, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Steve.
Steve Bachman!
Buckley, Washington.
Oh no.
Who are you, and how did you get involved in Bigfooting?
Well, the long story short, grew up in Sumner, Washington on a dairy farm. In my 20s, got in the building business, became a contractor, raised 3 kids, and but I always dabbled in crazy stuff. I always had to have these extra crazy little projects going. I was working with hydrogen, making heaters, or even making pinball machines and gumball machines and vending machines. I got into all that one time, but it's always a side. I always got side stuff I'm doing, and then I made a over unity machine, and that produces electricity, and it provoked me to, during that time, and this was in the last 3-4 years, I had always watched YouTube, started watching YouTubes because I caught this Bigfoot thing. I just happened to catch a YouTube. And so one thing went to the next, and then I narrowed it down among all these people to a guy in Florida and a guy in Oregon. And I had already built this over Unity machine, and for some reason I wrote him a letter because I wanted to go up to Soya. But it was really out of character for me to do that. To this day, I really don't know why I did it. So I'm not a Bigfoot researcher. I'm really, I guess you could call me a Bigfooter, but I'm really kind of not. Matt gave me this crazy call. I ended up at Soya, and it was June 26, 2016, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, when I woke up, my life had changed forever. And what they were doing to me is undescribable. It was all good. And of course, I didn't know that at the time. And from that point on, they've never left my side. They've been by me 24/7. So they never leave. They are always with me. And I get visited at home. I get visited in the evenings almost every night by somebody new comes into my bedroom, and they just sort of play with you. It's in orb form. You can't see them. They push on you and probe and move your covers a little, and every night when I go to bed, just something I haven't said is, and I haven't told most people this, but every night I go to bed, there's an orb inside my pillow. And I'll lay my head on my pillow, and he or she will come up, and she'll go like this on my face. And you feel her push the pillow up, and it's the material, and you can feel, and she's there, he or she is there every single night I go to bed. And it's now when I go to bed, if I don't feel her, I reach down, look down the pillow, and I say, "Are you in there?" You know, and that's all it takes. And then you put your ear to the pillow, and you can hear her moving around. It's like as if a mouse was in your pillow, trying to wrestle around. So that's the kind of noise you'd hear. Guarantee there's no mouse in my pillow. But the stories are endless. I could sit here for 10 hours and tell you interactions. It's been a year and a half now. It was not easy to get used to, but it's just my life with them. It's really a personal thing. It's, you know, it's because nobody can see it. I hate to even tell anybody because it sounds so Peter Pan-ish, you know. And, but yet it's as real as Captain Crunch cereal, you know. So anyway, that's my life in a nutshell.
Thank you, sir. We got a little beast over there making noise. Okay. Stuart, you're next, buddy.
How you doing, Matt?
Good.
All right. Let me see. Where did I start? How do I follow that? Basically, started when I was hunting. We got there's 4 of us. Got scared out of a hunting campsite, and my guardian angel must have been there or something because I know we were doing more than 100 miles an hour down that road, and it's a 25-mile-an-hour road. Getting out of there, and that was my first experience, so to speak. That was clear back in 1980, and then for 20 years I didn't do anything with it or think about it. Just kind of tried to put it out of my mind, and everybody else that was there with me either quit hunting or moved away or both. I was the only one that I knew of that kept hunting. Another time I was out by Mount St. Helens, and something was walking along. It was an old mill pond. Pile was over here. It was all grown with 50-year trees. And it had got done raining, and you could hear the rain hitting the ground, but you could hear something else moving there too. And I got this feeling I was being watched. And so I got to the point where I would walk fast for about 30, 40 feet and then stop abruptly, and then I would hear step, step. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was kind of interesting. Myself and my daughter and some other family members were out mushroom picking one time up by Mount St. Helens, different area. And we built...
Go get him, Zeus. Go get him.
Boy, what a
Yeah.
hard dog.
And coming in the door, we'll get back to you, Stuart, in just a second, is Scott and Susan Taylor. Yay. We're sitting around getting to know each other. You came in just in time. There's room for you on the couch. Susan, can you move over more? There we go. So we'll have room for you and Scott over here.
It's all nice and warm now.
Yep.
That and we put the Susans together.
Yeah,
I can
Susan,
be Sue.
Susan.
She can be
So Scott, you get to sit between them. Yeah, they know each other.
This is my aunt.
Yeah. Okay.
We know.
Okay. So we're getting to know each other, and Stuart, go ahead.
So just before we went out mushroom picking, I did I got laid off at work. They told us to do an outrageous paper. Of course, pick Bigfoot. So did a paper on that, and in my research, that's where I started with the BFRO in Ohio, Bigfoot research, and a few other places. And there was just something missing there that I could never put my finger on. I always felt that it's weird when I'm out in the woods, I get the feeling when they're around, and I didn't know it until just recently what it was. My daughter was picking with me, and the rest of the group was a little bit separated from us. And she stopped, and she looked at me, and she said, "Dad?" And it's that tone of voice that you know. Mm-hmm. And I just looked up at her, and I said, "It's all right. They're okay. They're just watching you. Just keep picking mushrooms, and we'll just keep moving." "Are you sure? Just keep picking mushrooms. You'll be fine." And because I wasn't getting the feeling that there was anything bad there, it was just something watching. And similar to the time that I was out hunting at the mill pond. And after that, it was I was walking by the TV and somebody was doing a story on Bigfoot and had a scream of Bigfoot. I wasn't even looking at the TV, I was walking out of the house and it just froze me in my tracks. Because I knew that's what I heard before, 20 years ago. So then I started researching, and then all these other things happened. And then I saw an alien conference, and there was this guy named Dr. Matthew Johnson. And a few other good people. Ron Moorhead was there. And so I said, okay, we're going to that. Went to that. And the rest is pretty much history. Met Dr. J. I could tell he was telling the truth right from the get-go. Was surprising how many things that he hit on of experiences that I've had in the woods where I'm going, what the heck is that? What's going on? What was that? He hit on every one of those. And so I went to his great reveal, and that was amazing. And that answered all the rest of my questions. Kind of turned me sideways for a while. But it answered all my questions. So, and now I'm here to experience it for myself. And I believe that experience yourself is better than reading it on the web, because there's a lot of junk on the web. There's some truth, but a lot of junk, and I learned that in my paper for the college. But that's about it for me.
Thank you, Stuart. Next.
My name is Pamela Roberts Owie, and I live in Rainier. I moved there 4 years ago. I lived in Yelm prior to that, lived in Nevada prior to that, and California prior to that. And when I was little and they had the Patterson film out, that's when my awareness became lucid with the entities. And anytime stories came up about them that were negating my child mind knew it was true. I had a lot of visions about them. I think I even have a past life memory where I was in a cabin and they used to come to the doors. So it was a long journey, but I never forgot them. And then one year I went to Coeur d'Alene with my husband. We were picking up an infrared camera for his electrical company, and technology was made by Howard Hughes. And the man who was selling us the camera had a casting on his desk. So while they were talking away, I just kept magnetizing. My body just kept getting pulled and pulled and pulled and pulled to this casting on the desk. And I knew exactly what it was. It was a handprint, a knuckle print. And I asked him and he confirmed it. And I was like, that's cool. You know, you're so close, but you're not, right there yet. And then just casually, people were having experiences and trade-offs, like they would, put food out and then they, in the middle of the forest, seashells would arrive, It's like, you can't explain all of that, It wasn't that I was out really searching for it, it's just that I accepted that they were there. And then I work once in a while, I'd have visions, and when I moved to Rainier, I would hear them running up and down the brush. Sometimes, when I first moved there, I thought, does somebody have a bull running loose? Because it sounded like this big entity would be, bashing through the forest, and I'm like, what on earth? And I've heard them before, I've heard them yell, but not make that kind of calamitous, noise, and I knew they were funny. When I lived in Fox Hill Lane in Yelm, there was a 200 acre forest there, and I would hear them clacking the rocks together or banging on the trees, and I knew it wasn't the elk, because I saw them too. And so I've always been like really close to meeting them. And then one day or night I had a vision where I saw one in my mind moving through the forest between my house and Nancy's house, and she looked right straight at me. She had red and dark brown hair. So I know that day is coming. And then there were people who were coming to talk about these entities, and then Matt came to the triad, and it was Matt's passion and his humbleness that really captured me in relation to what's happening. And so then he came again, and then I went to Nancy's house, and twice I went to Nancy's house, and I only the other day had a vision at night and got on the internet the next morning to check him out, and that's how I found out about this. So
Cool.
that's why I'm here. I'm supposed to be here, so
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pam.
You're welcome.
Now, Keith and Dawn.
Dawn Weiser, and my husband found Matthew first, but I've always...
You told her? Thought that was between us, buddy. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
I've always been a believer. The first and only time that I have actually seen a full figure was, I was just about 8 years old. We were at church camp at Mount Lassen, and I was the only one in the group that had to take a little potty break. Nobody wanted to go down with me, so I start going down the hill by myself, and there's this little field off on the side, and at first I thought it was a bear, but then it stood up, and I saw it for maybe 5 seconds, took a deep breath, trying to decide at that time, do I run, do I stand still, do I scream, what do I do, and then all of a sudden it was gone. So, of course, I went and did what I needed to do, but that whole week at the camp, and I never put 2 and 2 together until about a year ago after we started going to the conferences and the meetings at the Hangar Inn. Just the signs that were there. I would hear noises at night. The cabin was one of those open, it had big open windows around the whole top, and there were no doors on it. So there were things that would happen, and I was like, well, there's an animal, so I'll just crawl in my sleeping bag and I'll hide. Typical 8-year-old, you know. But there were always these wooden figurines, if you want to call it that, in the middle of the path. I woke up one morning, there were 3 asterisks in a row. And then there were a couple of days later, there was an arrow, and then there was an X, and then another X. And I'm thinking it's just the older camp kids messing around with the younger kids. And so I didn't really think much of it. Shortly after that, we moved to England, lived there for 3 years because my dad was Air Force. Things would happen, and I'm like, and where we lived, there was woods behind our house because they built the neighborhood in the middle of the woods. So just the activity that would happen, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And then my husband had his experience and found Matthew, and we started going to the meetings and stuff like that, and that's when I started putting everything together.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Keith?
I'm Keith Leiser. I met Matt because of my experience. I too, like Stuart, was hunting, and I had this overwhelming feeling to go home, and you know, I was there the day before and didn't have that feeling. The day before there was deer, turkey, birds, squirrels. That very next morning, there was nothing. It was so still. There was no birds, there was no sound. It was just the breeze from the wind. And I just got this feeling to go home. Not leave the area, it was go home. I thought my low blood sugar was bothering me, so I mean, what do I got to be afraid of? I got a 300 Win Mag, 45 knives at my disposal. I'm a hunter. Well, it got the best of me, so I left. And I went home, not just to the truck. I went home, just like something told me to go home. And I hadn't been hunting since, until this year was the first year in 3 years since it happened. But that made me start looking, why did I feel that way? Why did I want to leave the forest? I've never been uncomfortable in the forest before. And I was that guy that found Matt, and I scrolled down to the bottom, and I worked my way up.
Yes, down and up. Yes.
And I watched.
You did it right, boy. Good job. Yeah,
Done.
you got her done.
And I seen the transition from the old school way to the habituation way to what's going on today. And then we went to my first conference that I went to, and then we started going to the meetings, and all my questions were answered. And it was a more relief knowing that I'm not the only person that was scared out of the forest. I'm not the only person that has been to a forest and heard nothing. And it's really weird to be in a forest and hear nothing. So, meeting Matt and Cynthia and some great people like we are tonight, you converse and have a great time doing it.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome.
Teresa.
I'm Teresa Thatcher from Eugene, Oregon.
Drove all the way from Eugene, people. Don't want to hear any belly aching about how I drove from Shelton. Bremerton. This is Eugene we're talking about. Okay, go ahead, Teresa.
As a kid, I lived in Alaska, and I spent 28 years over in Alpine. I've done a lot of bear hunting, a lot of deer hunting, mushroom picking, and rock hunting. And I've never really had any kind of experience, but I've always been interested in it. So about 4 years ago, I started when my son set me up with an internet and a computer. I started checking all of the little YouTubes out there about it. And this guy here, I felt like he was the most honest about it. So I followed him for a long time and kind of scooted the other ones away. I do like Barbara Shoup and them. And I don't know if you all believe that they like marbles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
I have a story about this marble. And I have a double wide mobile home, and down one side, it's on a corner lot, so down one side I did a lot of mulching, and I planted some blueberries and some roses, and I had a bucket full of river rock, and I placed the river rock around each of the roses and the blueberries. And I thought it was really sharp. I go out there in the morning with my coffee, and one morning, something had dug the river rock to the side. And I thought, what? I just planted those. And right in the middle of that bush was a marble. And I thought, yes, they left me a marble because cat didn't do it. I had a raccoon buried butter in my flower bed. They didn't do it. The squirrel did. I live in a 55 and older park. The people around me, my neighbors are 70 and 80 years old. They're not playing marbles.
They might be losing those.
Losing their marbles.
Their kids are 40 to 60. They're
Yeah.
not playing marbles.
Yep.
So I really think he left it.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Ronnie.
Hi, my name is Ronnie Malik, and I'm from Bonnie Lake, Washington. I became involved with Bigfoot back in the 70s. My mother worked for Good Samaritan Hospital, and one of the other housekeepers there lived nearby, out in the woods by some property. And it was the time when they filmed or they recorded the Puyallup sounds.
Yeah.
And she was out there when they had the scientists out there, and they were hanging fish up in the trees and taking casts and whatnot. And her coworker had two twin boys, and they'd ride their bikes out in the woods and whatnot, and they were chased by a Bigfoot back in there. So that's what brought us in. And then it was the old legend of the Bogey Creek and the Patty film and this and that. And Mom talked about it all growing up. And probably about 15 years or so ago, I had I may have been an experience up in Greenwater. I was part of a Gym and Rock club, and we were supposed to meet up with a group to go look for agates up around Forest Road 70. And we didn't get the meeting place right, so me and my friend, we went up to the end of 70 thinking we'd find them, they'd pass us or something, we'd hook up. And that never happened, so we decided to take off on our own, and we went down 70, went on some side roads, and went up in the hills till we couldn't go any further. There was a little road there, and we parked the car, and we went up about 2 blocks up. It was a clearing, and we started looking for rocks and agates and crystals and things, and was probably up there for a half hour or so, didn't find anything. So we started to walk back to the car, and off to the side, there was something in the woods, and we could hear it started making noises. and it was kind of doing this kind of a guttural kind of and we didn't know what it was. Could it be a bear? I don't know. Could have been. But what was odd about it was that my friend, she was about 10, 15 years older than me, and she just took off running. This woman had speed I've never seen before. And I'm chasing her with, I got the keys, right? We get in the car, and it took me like 3 or 4 times just, it could have been just a smooth little back it out, but it took forever to get the car back. But this thing, it followed us all the way down, a good 2 blocks. And when we got the car situated where we could take off fast if we needed to, we just sat there with our windows down. And it sat in the woods there. It wasn't up in a tree. Again, I don't know exactly what it is, but I really feel that it was like a juvenile messing with us. The odd thing, though, we left, and we were not even 5 miles down the road, and my friend starts hot flashing, and she needed me to pull over in the middle of the woods. So I just stop in the middle of the road and pop out a chair, and she sits down, and while she's cooling down, I'm looking over in the ditch, and there's little plants and things. And I thought, well, I'm going to go pick some of these little ferns and things, bring them home, make a little terrarium. And as I'm over there picking them, I see a print in the mud in the side, because it was like a little river, not river, but a little culvert type thing. And they were going up the embankment. And so I started following up the embankment, and the stride was a good 4 or 5 feet apart. And I started walking. You could follow the trail back into the woods. And once you got over to the trees, there was a few branches that were snapped off about 7, 8 feet up. And I'm just following it along, and all of a sudden my friend, you can hear, where are you going? You get back here right now. You ain't leaving me out here. So I had to turn around and go back. I thought I had found hair, and submitted that to the Oregon Bigfoot. I'm a part of their website. And come to find out, it was legend. But got to know Autumn. It was a Moss. It was a former Moss. But Autumn Williams, yeah, and her mother Sally.
Yeah.
Their experiences were right down the road in Oregon.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice, just by reading her book, I was able to find where they lived.
Enoch. You're referring to Enoch.
No,
Valley
Sally's
of
the Valley of the
Valley of the
Scoop.
Scoop.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
She's a
so-
good gal.
Yeah, I love
Autumn,
those
yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
It was nice. I was able to snap pictures and take and send them back home to them and whatnot. So that was kind of nice.
Cool.
But then I met Dr. J at the Oregon Sasquatch Symposium, and what really got my attention was hearing him tell his story about his family and him when they were up at the Oregon Caves, and you could feel his emotion and how it affected him, and it just it was such a strong feeling, and you could see that he wasn't faking it. It was you could see the bodily response that he had telling the story, and it was just a really wonderful experience. And then I got lucky that him and Cynthia ended up moving up to South Hill, Puyallup, and started doing the meetings up there at the airport there, and that was a lot of fun. Enjoyed that, learned a lot, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. Just over the top excited.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Susan,
I can't talk in front of you, I get really embarrassed.
let's go.
Yeah, right.
I
That means she's been over 5 minutes.
do. My name's Susan Rankin, but you can call me Sue since we got Susan here. And I'm from Washington State. I grew up in Spanaway. And I was a really outdoors kid. Loved to be outdoors, slept out all summer, tried, tree forts, the whole bit. So I went to a birthday party with my best friend across the street. We went to the movies and we saw before our movie was played, we saw the Gimlin Patterson clip, and I thought, whoa, that's creepy. I automatically believed it. I mean, it just looked so real. And so about 1970 came along, and I was about 11 years old. I used to babysit for the neighbors, all the neighbors. I was working it. And I would babysit for this particular couple. Our neighbors passed on, and they gave that property to all their kids. The kids all moved their houses mobile homes onto the property. So this one trailer was moved way back. The Fort Lewis Reservation was was the boundary of our property. We had 5 acres. It wasn't wooded like this. It was pretty wide open. So the Fort Lewis Reservation, of course, had all the trees. In fact, they had such big trees in there when I was little, I could literally lay on a stump and my feet wouldn't reach the end, or my head. I used to lay out there just on a stump and just kind of trip out there. I was a real outdoors kid, but. So, I'm babysitting one night. The couple come home, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I lived on Mountain Highway, 50-mile-per-hour road, really busy during the day, really quiet at night. Hardly no cars at all, really quiet. And being how I was young, she would walk me to my fence line and I would run on home. My house sat way up by the road. And so they come home and he passes out on the couch and she goes, come on, I'll walk to the fence. So we head out the door and we're laughing and talking and just being natural. Got halfway across the yard there, and all of a sudden there's just this big long scream, and we just froze and looked at each other like, what is that? Nobody said a word, we just couldn't move, we were just frozen. And it was so close you could almost feel it in your chest. And you knew it was big. You knew it was really big. And I didn't know what to do. I was like just hearing that scream and I couldn't move. And then when it stopped though, I turned right back around and I ran so fast back to her house. And the weird part about it is we were heading towards where it was coming from, but the trailer was closer than my house. So I about tore the door off. She was right behind me getting in the house. So I said, I'm not going back out there. Unless somebody comes down here with a gun or drives me home, I'm not going back out there. She's like, what is that? I go, I don't know what it was. I go, I don't know, I had no clue. It was scary though, whatever it is. So anyhow, a couple of years later, the documentary with Leonard Nimoy was on, and the very beginning of his documentary, they actually start filming the woods and stuff, and then they play this big long Sasquatch scream, and that's exactly what I heard. I was in the kitchen making me a sandwich, and it was on in the front room, the TV, and when I started hearing that noise, I was like, I busted butt into the front room and looked, and I'm looking at everybody, I'm going, that's what I heard, and they're all looking at me like, you're crazy. I heard that. I never saw it, I didn't want to see it, because I was scared enough as it was. It's like if I have an encounter tonight, you're gonna have to just like hold me down because I'm that far from just running.
You are a Navy SEAL, strong as steel.
Okay.
You are not going to overreact, or Dr. J is going to have to kick your butt.
So I'm the youngest of 5 in the family, and my oldest sibling is 18 years older than me. So she had a daughter 2 years after I was born, and we were very close growing up.